Let me ask you something. When a cyber attack hits, data gets stolen, systems go down, and millions of people are affected. What do you think happens next? Do governments just sit back and watch, or do they have a way to fight back without launching a cyber war? Welcome to Bluehat Cybersec Academy. Now here's the reality. When a cyber attack happens, we often focus on one question: who did it? But there's another question that matters just as much. What can governments actually do about it? Because catching attackers is one thing, but stopping them, punishing them, and preventing future attacks, that's a whole different challenge. And this is exactly where cyber sanctions come into play. Now you might be wondering, why do cyber sanctions even exist in the first place? Well, in reality, arresting attackers is often not possible. Many cyber attackers operate from foreign countries, are protected by state boundaries, and use anonymity and proxy infrastructure. So governments need alternative ways to respond. Cyber sanctions help with deterrence, sending a clear message that cyber attacks have consequences. They help with disruption, limiting attackers' access to financial systems and resources. They create accountability, publicly identifying and condemning malicious actors. And they apply diplomatic pressure without escalating into direct conflict. Now let's explore the different types of cyber sanctions. One of the most common forms is financial sanctions. These include actions like freezing bank accounts, blocking access to financial systems, and prohibiting transactions, making it harder for attackers to fund their operations or benefit from stolen assets. Then we have travel bans. Governments may restrict sanctioned individuals from entering certain countries, which affects their movement, international collaboration, and personal freedom. Another approach is trade restrictions. This involves limiting access to technology, software, and critical infrastructure components, especially important when dealing with state-sponsored groups. There are also asset freezes. Assets owned by sanctioned individuals or entities, such as property or investments, can be frozen or seized, directly weakening their economic position. And finally, there's blacklisting and designation. Governments may officially label individuals or organizations as cyber threats, leading to reputational damage, isolation from global systems, and increased scrutiny. Now let's understand how cyber sanctions are actually applied in the real world. The process usually begins with attribution. Authorities need to identify who is responsible for the attack, and this is often a complex task involving technical forensics, intelligence gathering, and international cooperation. Once attribution is established, the next step is legal and political evaluation. Governments assess the scale and impact of the attack, the strength of the evidence, and the potential consequences of imposing sanctions. And finally, sanctions are implemented through mechanisms like executive orders, legislative frameworks, or international agreements. Now, if we look at how different parts of the world approach cyber sanctions, we see some variation. For example, the United States often uses executive orders to target individuals and foreign groups involved in major cyber attacks. The European Union has its own cyber sanctions regime, allowing member states to act collectively. And many other countries are gradually developing similar frameworks as cyber threats continue to rise. In many cases, coordination between nations significantly increases the effectiveness of sanctions. But of course, cyber sanctions are not without challenges. One major issue is attribution. If you cannot confidently identify the attacker, imposing sanctions becomes risky and controversial. Another challenge is limited enforcement. Sanctions only work if the targeted entity has assets or exposure within the sanctioning countries and if other nations cooperate. There are also political implications to consider. Sanctions can escalate tensions between countries and, in some cases, lead to retaliation. And then there's evasion. Cyber attackers are constantly adapting, using cryptocurrencies, intermediaries, and multiple jurisdictions to bypass restrictions. So the big question is, do cyber sanctions actually work? The honest answer is, sometimes. They are most effective when combined with law enforcement, diplomacy, and strong cybersecurity defenses, when supported by international cooperation, and when carefully targeted. But they are less effective when applied by a single country without support, when weakly enforced, or when based on uncertain attribution. Looking ahead, cyber sanctions are, continuing to evolve. As cyber threats grow, we can expect stronger international collaboration, more precise targeting using better intelligence, and, closer integration with broader cybersecurity strategies. There is also increasing discussion around global norms for cyber behavior, stronger legal frameworks for accountability, and public-private partnerships. But beyond law and strategy, there are deeper ethical and strategic questions. How certain should governments be before imposing sanctions? Could sanctions unintentionally affect innocent individuals or organizations? Should countries be publicly named and shamed? Balancing accuracy, fairness, and political consequences is not easy. So let's bring everything together. Cyber sanctions have become a critical tool in modern cybersecurity. They allow governments to respond to cyber threats without direct conflict, using economic and political pressure instead. But they are not a perfect solution. Their success depends on accurate attribution, strong enforcement, and meaningful international cooperation. Because in the world of cyber warfare, the battlefield isn't just technical, it's financial, political, and global. And understanding cyber sanctions helps us understand how nations respond and push back in the digital age. Do you think cyber sanctions are enough to stop global cyber attacks? Or are stronger actions needed? Which type of sanction do you think is most effective? Financial restrictions, travel bans, or trade limitations? And why? If attackers can bypass sanctions using new technologies like cryptocurrency, how should governments adapt? And here's a bonus. Should countries publicly name cyber attackers, even if it increases political tensions? Take a moment to think about these questions, or share your thoughts and start a discussion. And if this gave you a clearer understanding of how governments respond to cyber threats, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Bluehat Cybersec Academy for more insights from our cyber law, governance, and compliance playlist. Because in today's digital world, understanding the rules of cyber conflict is just as important as understanding the technology itself.